Hi, my name is Walter Lesh. Welcome to Online in Rocky River and Beyond. In today's episode, we'll take a look at your home router and Wi-Fi speeds. All right, so how does this work? First, you're going to unplug or disconnect everything that doesn't need to be on. That means everything except the testing device. Ideally, you will want to do wired tests as well as wireless tests. Then you're going to look at your bill to see what your internet should be, how fast it should be. It'll either state a plan or it'll give the actual amount of data that should come through per second. Then you're going to do the tests. Ideally, you'll want to do wired tests, and that means connecting a device like a laptop or a desktop to the router with what's called an RJ45 or Ethernet cord. It's bigger than a phone cord. It's not the same as a phone cord. If you can plug it into an outlet for a phone on the wall, it's not an RJ45 connector. Then you're going to connect one end of it to the router. Those 4 yellow ports in the picture are called Ethernet ports, and that's where you connect one end, and then the other end goes into the device that you're going to use. Then you're going to run a couple speed tests. You might even do it with a couple different companies. For example, here's one from a speed testing service called measurementlab.net, and that will measure both upload and download speeds. That's what you're mainly concerned about, in addition to a couple of other things it'll test. Here's another one from Ookla, which is at speedtest.net. You just want to see what it is and do it several times to get an idea of what the speed is really like. So with a wired connection, speed isn't going to change usually when you move the wire and the device around. It's wireless connections that vary, and there are things that interfere with Wi-Fi. Distance from the router makes a difference, and interferences with the router can make a difference, as well as how many devices you have compared to the amount of data you can receive through your service plan. So those 3 things, distance, devices, and interferences, are the big culprits for Wi-Fi speed loss. What interferes with Wi-Fi? Well, you might be surprised. Interferences include things like cordless telephones, hair dryers, microwave ovens, induction range cooktops, toasters, coffee machines, mixers, Bluetooth devices like the Bluetooth keyboard right in front of your computer. Even other people's Wi-Fi boxes can cause interference. You might be surprised. Anything with an electric motor, anything that's running, could turn off or could interfere with your Wi-Fi. So, in addition to removing objects that cause interference like electronics, what else can I do? Well, you can look at your router and see if it supports 2 types of bands. One is 2.4 gigahertz. The newer one is 5 gigahertz. 5 gigahertz is not to be confused with 5G cellular technology. That's something different. 2.4 gigahertz band is slower, but it also goes farther and passes through objects more easily. The 5 gigahertz newer band is faster, but it unfortunately does not go through objects as easily, and it travels a shorter distance, so it doesn't have the range. You can also turn stuff off. If you don't want to up your service plan to allow more devices online at the same time, turn things off when you want to do something important with one device, like watch a movie. You can also kick the moochers off your Wi-Fi. If your Wi-Fi is not passworded, make sure that you do that, and like the lock says, use WPA2 rather than the older technologies. Another thing that you can do is reset the equipment. No, that's old advice. Usually, you're not going to do that with your modern Wi-Fi router. You're going to update it instead. And you can get helper devices. Helper devices are things like mesh wireless extenders, Wi-Fi range extenders, Wi-Fi repeaters. They're called different names and there are different types, but they are devices that work with your existing router to extend the range of your Wi-Fi to get a strong signal throughout your abode. You can also use a VPN or a virtual private network. They're usually not free. You'll be paying extra money for it, but that might help you bypass the occasional throttling that occurs by internet service providers once you have achieved a certain amount of traffic. Another thing to do is to stay current, update, and upgrade. This is an example of different levels of internet speeds that you can get for a certain range of money from a local internet service provider. If you're not getting good service for the plan that you have, upgrading your plan may be the answer, but you'll pay more money. This is the most unpopular slide in the whole stack, isn't it? Maybe you should be wired to the router instead. Wired connections don't suffer from the problems that wireless connections do. So if your work is really important and you do it at the same place all the time, maybe you should figure out how to wire your connection to that router and your device. And finally, some general advice is to update everything. Update your equipment, your devices. Make sure your operating systems are up to date. Update the router firmware. Consult your device manual and your internet service provider for that one. Make sure all your operating systems are up to date. Make sure your web browser is up to date. Make sure the apps that you use are up to date. And make sure your service plan meets your needs. Thanks for watching today. Stay tuned on this channel to watch another episode of Online in Rocky River and Beyond. Thanks.